It's Dr. May. Welcome to Asylum. Um, let's see, I'm getting notification that my message is weak. So hopefully this is broadcasting. Guess we'll see, right? Okay, so the topic is escaping circumstance. First, I guess it's most important in order to be on the same, in the same semantic space, in the same metaphor, mental space, to be thinking about what circumstance means. Um, to me, circumstance is it's an illusion. It's the story. Hey Barry, it's the story that you infer from any given situation, like here and now. So, a lot of the work that I've been doing most recently, the practice that I've taken on and been developing, centers around being present. And an important aspect of being present is noticing. Hey, Nicole, how are you? An important aspect of being present is noticing the things that come up in your mind. Um, Now, most of us are so busy being active and just staying in motion, really often out of a fear that if we slow down to the point of inertia, we may get stuck there. And some of us, our circumstance is actually being stuck there, but that's a different point of view. Some of us are so busy staying in motion that we forget what initiated the motion, what got us in that motion. And instead of having a clear idea of what the motivating factor was, what the catalyst was, we have this sense of urgency and often this vague narrative. It's vague because when we stop to nail it down, a lot of the parts of it that are emotionally charged fall apart. Um, so let me back up a bit and kind of, I guess, not really back up, but look at it from a sort of different level of abstraction just to make sure that I'm clarifying the concept. Um, your brain, your mind, because this is a concept, your mind has an idea in it, the idea of an event. An event is one of the fundamental ideas that we have in mind. It exists in there before we even label it. We recognize an event. Hey, Nichelle, how are you? Thanks for dropping by. So we recognize an event. Um, Now, it says my connection is weak, so let me know if you guys are able to hear me okay. Whether you comment or show me some love. I like hearts too. I heart hearts, so there. Um, but so what separates an event from a circumstance is that an event is it's a core construct in your mind. It's something you look up and you're like, "Oh, this happened." Well, what happened? When you ask yourself what happened, the answer should be either an event or a slightly positively valenced circumstance, uh, a, a story. So you want to notice the story that you're telling yourself over and over and over again as the driving force throughout your day. This is sort of a higher level of abstraction than just listening to your self-thought talk. Your self-talk it's what's called propositional working memory. This is the words that are running through your mind. Good morning, Michelle. So it's the words that are running through your mind. Okay, that's one layer of your cognition, and that drives you to a certain extent. But you want to hop up and look at the thematic elements, and this is called implicative working memory. Your working memory, which is like the main place where your consciousness lives, can be divided into two parts. Taking up your what we call space. You know how people say create space. When they say create space, they're talking about what you choose to store in your working memory. Um, so to go geek a little bit, your working memory can hold 4 bits of information. Those 4 bits of information can have 4 bits of information in each of them. So your brain can do these infinite nests of information. What? Hey, Christine. the content of each of those, and they're called chunks. And chunking is when you stack that info up, so you have these organized blocks of info that you recognize out in the universe. One of these chunks, a labeled chunk, is an event. When you look and you see an event, there are going to be different sub-elements to it. For example, if I say I went to the beach last week, and actually, Nichelle, you're making me think of that, although I always love beach metaphors. So you say, I went to the beach last week. Now, that was an event. When you pull up that event, now and forever, and even as you're experiencing the event, because even as we're experiencing events, we have this self-talk running, these words that are looping through our minds. And then the second layer, we have these stories we're telling ourselves at the same time. Those are the created circumstances. So I can say I went to the beach last week. Now, initially that's neutral. Someone hearing that, including myself, should, and I don't mean the guilt-ridden should, I mean should, from there be able to infer a little bit of a good feeling. The beach is fun, unless you have a traumatic memory or something negative associated with the beach. I went to the beach last week pulls up a bit of a positive feeling. You know, a person hearing you say that would get some gratitude. They enjoy the beach. They appreciate you telling them about the beach. You yourself, in your self-talk, thematically appreciate, to a certain extent, the beach. Now, the beach will have some little chunks in it, some little pieces when you stop and you pay attention. Now, the amount that you enjoy the beach circumstance, this story, is dependent on what the chunks were that you chose. If you chose to remember chunks that you value, chunks that you felt, that you experienced gratitude during, chunks during which you had joy, pride, just the positive elements, as opposed to remembering and holding on to chunks during which you were angry at someone annoyed you, you felt uncomfortable in your bathing suit, you looked at yourself in the mirror, you overdrank, you overspent, you were stressed about how expensive the trip was going to be. By choosing to remember now, like now, in the present, when you pull back a memory, you have the opportunity to frame it when you pull it back by the valence you choose to put on it. Hey, Cindy, thanks for dropping by. So, back to this beach trip. So you can remember the beach, and you can remember the elements you value within it. And hey, Carmen. So by remembering the elements you value in your beach trip and pulling those into your presence, you create your current moment. You create the circumstance that emerged from that event. Now, remember, I said events have these little chunks in them. Your brain can only hold four chunks of info at the top level. Okay, 4 pieces of info. Each of those pieces of info can have other pieces of info, other concepts within them. Each concept can have a certain amount of an emotional charge. Okay? When you choose to pull the beach back, if you pull it back with some elements that have a negative charge, if that's the rehearsal you choose to give to that circumstance, then you eliminate the opportunity for that piece of your past, that piece of who you are, to be empowering, to be absorbed into the rest of your memory, the rest of your narrative. Because when we remember something in the narrative negatively, when we remember it with anger, envy, self-consciousness, discomfort, when we focus on the negative aspects of it and we pull that into the present, we essentially de-energize ourselves in the present moment, because you only hold 4 pieces of information. If you chose information such as worry, anger, whatever you choose to feel as an emotion in the now, that's the attribution you're going to put on everything that you're pulling in from the past memory. Okay? Now, I don't want this to feel as if I'm going to stay stuck in this past, because the past is just one aspect of escaping circumstance. The past these memories are always going to come up. This is the life that you've had thus far. The second element in the present, what is true in an event, is that an event, the recognition of an event, recognizing, okay, this is a fight, this is love, this is a car accident, this is my new favorite movie, this is my favorite song. An event is activated when you choose to believe that that's happening. The fact that that event in your mind, if I went in your ERP, event related potential, it's in the name. It's when we put an EG on you, we can track that at some point your brain fires off, bloop, bloop, zzz, this event happened. Okay? Now, that pure event, when you pull it back based off a trigger, something in the environment, it's based on recognition, recognition. You're rethinking that event, and that's how you're activating it. Hey, Nisa, how are you? So, as you pull it up, if our conscious mind, and actually our unconscious, and it's recognized by the conscious mind, is so keen on making meaning that as you're pulling it up, in order for it to reach your conscious mind, to reach as something you can understand, you're going to make meaning of it. You're going to attribute something to it. So anything happening in your environment can easily be subsumed, be sucked into the story that you choose to pull out of your memory based on how you're triggered. Now, so I'm going to step back one level from how are you triggered. You're triggered based on, again, this is a loop. You're triggered based on the stories that you're in the process of telling yourself in the now, in the mood that they trigger. Okay? Memory is state-based. And by state-based, they mean emotional state, where you are emotionally. So if you're walking around all day in a sense of gratitude and you stay present and you actively choose to be thankful, no matter what's happening, you make a decision to reframe it in such a way that it is part of your becoming. Okay? And that's not to sound too esoteric, holding hands or whatever. It's part of the story that at some point you're going to tell when you look back. This piece, every piece of present is part of the story you're going to tell. And as such, the mood that you choose in this moment affects the memories you choose to reach back and taint or highlight or suppress or reframe or face if it's a fear memory and elaborate. When you face a memory from a safe place, from an awareness of gratitude in the present, that empowers you to choose to only retrieve the elements of the memory that empower and nurture you. Now, that takes an underlying belief in a general abundance in the universe, a general goodness of intention of people that you meet, and obviously there's going to be a lot of betrayals, because initially, as you start to choose to see things as events and opportunities for learning, you're going to have these events where you're going to go in with your gratitude and you're going to get exploited. You're going to go in with your gratitude and your optimism and positive expectancy, and stuff's going to go badly. But you're also going to go in with the confidence that despite that, you're going to have the skill of choosing to retrieve that memory later when the time comes and parse it so that you only have the empowering, strengthening, ego syntonic, really, as you know, a lot of times people talk about detaching from ego, but you can't detach from ego while ego is still wounded. This is common sense. Open loops don't allow you to detach from them as effectively. They keep coming back. So childhood wounds, unmet needs, all those things leave for open-ended situations, which are easily triggered by your environment and open you up to a story that basically becomes a negative circumstance. This is one of the things that happens if you reach in with a bit of vulnerability, in a moment, and you're triggered into a negative state. And in that negative state, you retrieve a memory. Uh, you, instead of pulling it up as an event, neutral to slightly positive and empowering, you pull it up as a circumstance with a sense of disempowerment, a sense of feeling trapped within it. Now, again, this is a choice. And then you pull it up, and as you're remembering it, if you feel badly, at that moment, you have a choice. You have a choice to disidentify with that past version of the story. And a lot of us feel guilt when we disidentify. Okay? And I'll use an extreme situation. Hey, Stacy, good morning. A lot of us, so to frame it most clearly, a lot of us, after certain events, we don't know how long to stay sad, how long to stay disempowered, how long to stay in mourning, how long to stay feeling guilty, how long to whatever before it's time to start healing. Well, the answer is, let the guilt stuff go. And there's a lot of different reasons for it. When you feel a negative emotion, there are a set of states you're going to go through. You don't go from abject, disempowered, sense of paralysis, disappointment, anger, disgust, to wide open gratitude, openness, positive expectancy. That's not how it works. These are energetic states. Each state attracts, and by attracts, I mean increases the likelihood that you're going to reach into your memory and pull back a certain type of story. So in the moment, in the now, the only thing you really have the ability to do is make a choice of what memory you retrieve, when, well, not even a choice of what you retrieve, because your subconscious mind is going to burp up memories, 60,000 or so a day. Okay, so you have a choice of how much attention you allow that memory and how you interpret it. And by interpret it, again, I mean what emotional lens you apply to the loop in the moment, in the now. Okay, you essentially in the present can be like, okay, I don't like this feeling. Okay, if you don't like that feeling, switch states. Well, what would be a preferable feeling? And sometimes in the midst of anger, anger is empowering. You jumped out of anger. You jumped out of sadness or jumped out of disappointment right into anger, because anger is motion. Anger is action. Anger makes you feel effective. Anger is also non-productive and reactive to circumstance. So, but none of that logic applies in your unconscious and when you are running on autopilot after having been triggered. So often in circumstance, you are in a triggered state. You are telling yourself this story in this loop. The way to exit the circumstance is to disidentify with the story, and that's easier said than done. The way to disidentify with the story is to start paying attention to those labels that you're applying to it. Okay? So you want to look at the labels you're applying and realize that those are the words that are looping in. Remember, I told you working memory has two parts. There's the propositional working memory, which is the words you're repeating to yourself all day and how they make you feel. Those are the affirmations. Those are the negative self-talk. Those are the language you apply to the negative, automatic negative thoughts that your subconscious mind burps up, and whether you choose to believe them. And then there's the second layer, the implicational. This is the meaning, the story, the thematics, the context, the narrative, the inferences, the tacit learning. Okay, so implicational working memory. So that memory is your consciousness. Working memory is your consciousness, as far as I understand it. So it holds 4 bits of info. Now, you can choose to flood it with words that move it, that change it, so that remember I told you each of those 4 bits can have all kinds of stacks, and those stacks can be emotionally charged. Those concepts, nested concepts, can have emotional valences to them. So you choose through repetition, in order to escape, to notice the labels that you're applying to something, and then look to see how the word choice, the language choice, is either disempowering you from action or empowering you with specific, measurable, actionable, yeah, that's the word, steps steps that retrospectively, when you're looking back in the next moment as your future self. And really, your future self is whoever you grow your current self to be. So get to growing. Hey, Doc Andre, how are you? So in the moment, which is the only place where you have a choice of action, choice, decision, one of the choices you have in any given moment is what you believe in the current situation and how that relates to what you've believed in the past. Therefore, you retrieve the memory from the past with a valence. And again, the gratitude shifts the frame of the memories that you retrieve. Semantically, gratitude puts you in a different state of mind. Gratitude, love, appreciation, trust, pride, just positive emotions. And a lot of the metaphors of mind, they talk about higher frequency, vibrate at a higher frequency, higher state of mind. They say, don't kill my vibe. So this is when they say don't kill my vibe, it's don't drop my frequency into those lower disempowered states. The confidence and all those positive, optimistic, positive expectancy. And these are measurements, a scale basically from the law of attraction school of thinking, which is the metaphor that usually takes that. So again, you disidentify and you put some labels on the situation. By putting labels on the situation, what you're doing is you're pointing your attention, your working memory, your consciousness in a direction of empowerment. And as such, you're more likely to pull up memories that also have action and resourceful memories that have direction, that have additional choice, that broaden and open up the possibilities that you perceive in any given situation or as a result of any given event. Okay? So this is filling up your mind, your current thought process, the loops that are running now with your choice of emotion. And as such, the choice of concepts is going to retrieve. Now, when the concepts come through, again, you have a choice of whether to believe them or not. What you do is you identify with temporarily, because we often identify, get angry, get stuck, and start doing things in the real world out of habit by being triggered into pulling up a memory. And when you start noticing that, you realize that that's the mechanism of disempowerment, because if the memory that you pull up and the associated action possibilities, what they call affordances, are not in alignment with your values, not in alignment with the change you want to see in the world, and especially not in alignment with the actions that you want to play in whatever change you anticipate in the future, like, stuff that destroys your vision or sabotages you, or decreases your sense of self-efficacy and your trust in your relationship with yourself and your ability to select from these elements bubbling from your unconscious. And to give you the word that will kind of seal that concept, when you can't trust your intuition, it's a result of a problem in this set of loops. Okay? When you distrust yourself, when your confidence, when you're like, what am I going to do on the stage? What am I communicating non-verbally? What do they see when they look at me? These are all things that aren't in the present. So returning to the present, because all your software, all your changes, all your ideas, all your opportunities, all your perceptions, all your inferences take place here, now, in the present. So returning to the present, as I mentioned before, one of the fundamental elements that your mind recognizes is an event. An event doesn't have the luggage, the baggage, the weight, the disempowerment, the energy sap or energy drain that a circumstance can have. Okay? So now, to be clear, it's important to understand that disempowering states can have positive or negative valence in the present. And by positive, I mean sometimes it can pull you towards it. A circumstance doesn't have to keep you scared and paralyzed. This is one way a circumstance can eliminate the abundance and opportunity in the present, by keeping you stuck sitting here in an inertial state, as opposed to in momentum moving towards your vision and your goal, making a rapid set of automated choices in alignment with your values. Those would be intentions, by the way. That's the software of running your intentions. Okay? So a circumstance, an inference of a story from a set of events that you chose based off selective memory and selective attention because of the mood that you chose to feel in the moment, is an illusion. Again, you eliminate the illusion by returning to the truth, the fact, which is a simple definition of the event, and then a reevaluation of the situation as it relates to your vision, as it relates to where you want to get. And from there, with your vision in mind, you're able to recognize both strategies, is how I think of it, that a circumstance can use to keep you from ultimately fulfilling your mission. Okay? A circumstance of temptation promises a payoff if you continue to do the things that you've been doing in the past. Now, the thing is, if you pause and listen deeply enough, hey, Doc Nicole, how are you? If you stay in the moment deeply enough, what will become clear to you emotionally, you'll feel this, is that the temptation is not in alignment with your path. The circumstance is keeping you stuck, keeping you distracted, keeping you repeating cycles of behavior which are using up energy that you need to be using to make choices in alignment with your vision. Those are the tempting circumstances. You change the valence on it, and you have your paralyzing, disempowering, distracting, negative circumstances where your interpretation of a situation puts you in a negative mood. Whether it's anger, jealousy, envy, and now keep in mind that all of these are frames of mind that presuppose a certain scarcity, because a lot of times the anger came from a fear. The fear was a fear of loss from an interpretation of a situation where you feel as if you lost something deeply symbolically meaningful. And sometimes also there's the fear that comes from the sadness, where the sadness is the fear has come true, where your interpretation of the circumstance of the event circumstance states that you have indeed lost something, and this is a moment for mourning, but you still have to get out of that circumstance. Okay, so I'm shifting gears a bit just to make sure that I cover the different valence aspects. Now, I should point out that all of these audios, the team is going to have them. They're getting them transcribed, and thanks to the awesome work of my new editor, who I still have to talk to her about talking about her name in public, or whether she's going to stay ghost for a couple more weeks. But all this stuff will be transcribed and available in text form. So, and it'll be cleaned up as well, and the order of these ideas will be organized more effectively. But returning to the nonlinear idea that I was going to next. So basically, you're looking at circumstances. Circumstances are at a higher level of abstraction than your event. And it's a higher level of abstraction means more uncertainty. More uncertainty means your mind is going to fill in the gap so as to get that cognitive closure. And the way you usually do that is with an emotion. The emotion tells you what you anticipate is coming in the future. Okay? If you're angry, you're anticipating some sort of anger-based behavior. And so, it's you go into a sort of fight mode, whether it's going to get back what was rightfully yours, whether it's to make sure the person who took whatever from you get what they have coming, and we tend to go towards those scripts pretty easily. And I want to point out, we learn them really young. If you watch some of the silly things that we propagate from our parents, that if you paused for a minute, you wouldn't, you would look back on yourself and be like, oh, I was taught that. That's kind of silly. I should probably get rid of that belief. But if you watch with our kids, like a lot of times we condition the quick shift from anger, disempowerment from sadness, disempowerment, grief to revenge, retribution by teaching kids, like, if they bump their foot or hurt themselves on a chair or a wall or whatever, instead of conditioning a behavior of personal responsibility, maybe you should watch out for that wall, or sometimes chairs do that. It's an inanimate object. We immediately condition the responsible. Oh, did this chair hurt you? And then we kick the chair and the child stops crying. It's cute. But it's triggering, it's conditioning a set of wiring that later, as we abstract it and generalize it, is one way in which we create these circumstances. It's a circumstance in which when you pull up a memory, you don't necessarily pull up the explicit aspects of the memory. You pull up little abstract parts, and you actually experience them more as part of the present moment most of the time. The only parts you think of explicitly are the parts that reach your conscious mind. Okay? Now, still, even though they are subliminal, subconscious, they still affect certain elements of you that don't need your conscious mind. The motion of your body, muscle memory, your psychoneuroendocrinology, your immunology, just these, your cortisol, your oxytocin, your orexin. And orexin is level of alertness, level of just activity consciousness, basically. So these elements respond to your choice of story, your choice of interpretation of the circumstance of the event into circumstance. So the key to escaping circumstance, again, is to disidentify, which is to step back and notice that this is your mind at work. The same way you can look at your arm and say, these are, you watch your hands move, watch your fingers. These are my fingers wiggling. This is my elbow bending. When you disidentify from mind and you realize, this is my mind doing this. This is me rationalizing. This is me disidentifying. And as such, jumping to a higher level of abstraction. This is me separating the concept, the present moment, from the emotion. This is me choosing a more positive emotion. This is me feeling the sense of relief that comes with choosing to perceive the world through a lens in a slightly different frame. This is me choosing a different sentence and evaluating how repeating that sentence to myself all day, every day, which is what your subconscious loops do when they're triggered, causes. Okay? So your choice of words tells you what you truly believe. What you truly believe becomes the story that loops subconsciously. If you have conflicting beliefs, internal conflict, two different things, one that you were taught younger and more naive, less aware, and really your prefrontal cortex doesn't really kick in until during adolescence, the true growth of that's sort of the human condition. And as such, it's not until then that you start actually critically evaluating logically at different levels of abstraction the things that your parents feed you. So how did I get down that rabbit hole? So in the early, until you can hold multiple ideas in mind and recognize, in this hand I have the concept, the event, the bare event. In this hand I have the emotions that this event triggers me into. You know what? What would life be like, I wonder, if I kept the event but choose to focus on the elements within the event that I value, the elements within the event that grew me, that transformed me, and that changed me and empowered me in this current moment to be in an emotional state to go forward more effectively, more in alignment with my initial vision before this circumstance came. Okay? Now, and I realize I'm talking about these at a high level of abstraction, but it applies to all circumstances. On the other side of any given circumstance, you by the sheer fact that there's something different you believe about reality. If the event came to consciousness, it's because some script in your mind is having trouble running on autopilot with it and thought it was worth bringing it to your attention. Okay, so yeah, if an emotion is aroused, a sympathetic response, and a triggering of a whole alert aware cascade, bringing it to your consciousness, then the task then is to make a choice. That's the purpose of your conscious mind. Make an intentional decision. And if the decision is to do an action, act on it immediately. If the decision is to withhold action, if the decision is to reevaluate and update a memory in your mind, a lot of times the decision is to go deeper inwards and to elaborate on concepts that you, quite frankly, had a negative valence around. And as such, you over the years chose to not elaborate those concepts. Okay? And basically, those are the circumstances. Those are the opportunities that come up that you have a chance to look at from different lenses, and from a lens of an emotion of gratitude or any empowering emotion, you're able to reach back and take the energy to separate the event from the emotions. The second you do that separation, what you instantly see is opportunities within the event because you're more empowered and energized to approach it. You have the gratitude for having experienced that event and the curiosity to reach within it to pull lessons out of it from which to grow. So, and the changes that happen in your pattern of being, and usually this involves the steps I just described to you, and I did them reiteratively, so hopefully if you missed it the first time, you picked up the pattern to the information structure that I had been looping through for the last amount of time. And really across a lot of my audios, I've been looping through the same set of simple patterns. It's seeing the pattern, the simplicity, seeing the pattern in the simplicity is what results in the ability to feel empowered enough to choose which versions of the patterns you pull back into memory. And they in turn serve as filters to your belief of the current moment, your belief about yourself, your belief about the reality that exists here and now and is accessible to you and therefore actionable. So I think I've covered the concept. I don't want to be like effusive and wander into other topics that would be better treated in another context. So, yeah. So I'll leave it there. Thank you for joining me in Asylum. Send me a private message if you'd like to build your own cognitive framework. One of the things that I do is I provide coaching on a basic streamlined it's a combination of goal setting, intentional living, mindfulness. It's got some NLP and hypnosis in it. It's just a collection of various tools that I've found to be most effective for processing information in a way that allows me to have the extra energy to be creative, to be spontaneous, and while having a set of useful structures that are in alignment with my values and allow me to rapidly store and access my information in an authentic way. Yeah. So that's basically how my mind works and the tools that I've collected that got me to thinking like this. Yeah. All right. So thanks for joining me in Asylum. Dr. Manny, I'm out.